What's going on, everybody? I hope everyone is having a great night so far. I'm here with some special guests. We got Mike McCoy from the Mike McCoy Show. We got the Crib, South Florida. If you follow his Twitter handle, man, he's covering all of recruiting in South Florida or just in general, man. Both of these guys do a great job at what they do, covering either Miami Hurricanes football or just highly touted recruits. So let's get into it, man. Ross, what do you have for us to start it off?
Well, man, I think, one of the big hot topics right now is this Canes quarterback battle for the number 2 job behind De'Aaron King. We got 2 impressive young quarterbacks. This first spring scrimmage got to show off a little bit of what Van Dyke and Garcia can do. I mean, there's a lot to be said still, but, it's at least promising. Mike, what are you thinking about this quarterback battle?
I mean, it's exciting, man. Like you said, they're battling out for number 2 because everybody knows, and Coach Diaz even made it clear in one of the pressers that he had earlier in the week. De'Aaron is the guy, once he's healthy. But the number 2 spot is interesting, man. I think it's well, in my opinion, it's easy because of the simple fact that he's been here for so long already. Tyler Van Dyke is going to, win that job out. Not to say that Jake is going to scrub it out. He had a pretty nice scrimmage the other day. But even if Kosi was here, sticking around for another year, it'd be close. But I think I'd still be going with TVD for the simple fact that he has that it factor in the head. We don't know on the field, but in the head. This is a guy that in his senior year of high school, I don't know if you guys remember this, but it's public record. You can Google it or whatever. He said he was going to start as a freshman. Now, we all know that wasn't going to happen, but it just speaks of his mentality and his confidence. So I like that. You need that in a quarterback position. That's the leader of your offense. So he's progressing. He had a nice nice scrimmage, and then there was a highlight in one of these practices that he had a nice throw to Harley. So he's coming along. It's his second year in the system, and he's my guy for number 2.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I remember the first time I actually saw the highlight tape for TVD, and I think the first throw on his tape was like a 65-yard flat-footed throw to the corner of the end zone, and I was like, okay, we got a little something here. And because I was a little skeptical at first because he's from Connecticut. You don't normally hear of Connecticut quarterbacks coming out and being studs, and especially coming from South Florida. Competition is a huge thing for me. But, when you turn on the tape, he's just got a natural ability to be that big pocket passer that Miami hasn't had in a long time. I think he brings some traits to the table that even Jake Garcia just really can't compete with. The arm strength. He does have a level of accuracy that, I don't know if the other guys have. Like De'Aaron King brings mobility to the table, and I think that brings a different aspect to the offense for Lashley. But I think TVD's that quarterback that Miami really needs that to start stretching the field. And I don't think they've had that in a long time. And he's my favorite for the job, the number 2 job, and the job next year.
I've only heard great things about Tyler Van Dyke, and I think it's really satisfying to see the quarterback room at Miami, depth wise, this talented. I can't recall the past quarterback rooms at Miami, to have quarterback depth, this deep. 3 quarterbacks, even Peyton Matoka, a lot of people praise him. So it's a very talented room. And, like the Crib stated, whoever wins this quarterback position, if it's Tyler Van Dyke, potentially will be the starting quarterback in 2022. And, speaking of quarterbacks, we just landed Jacuri Brown out of the state of Georgia. And I wanted to pick everyone's brain and what they thought about Jacuri Brown. And I'll start off with Ross. I mean, what are your thoughts about Jacuri Brown, a 4-star, number 5 dual threat quarterback in the nation?
High-level athlete for a dual-threat quarterback, physically strong as well. I mean, he's just got the overall size that we haven't seen as far as a dual threat at University of Miami. We've seen De'Aaron King, who's not, he doesn't even press 6 foot. This gives us something that we just simply haven't had. This is Lashley's guy. Lashley locked onto him. Lashley stuck with him, just kind of like Garcia. But thankfully, he got Jacuri earlier in the cycle, and let's hope that benefit plays off for us, that he can recruit for us a little bit as well while we're doing all this. But man, we've got a very, very high caliber athlete. There are some slight things that he needs to work on with his mechanics throwing, but that's normal. There's a lot of kids that need to. He's starting to show some improved touch this offseason on his passes, I've noticed. So that's always a positive. As long as he continues to show improvement, that's definitely the guy that we're going to stay locked into.
How about you guys? What do you guys think about Jacuri Brown? I think this is I think it's different. It's a different kind of quarterback Miami has gotten in the past. He's very talented, very athletic. I think he has a very strong arm as well. He's very physically advanced as well, something you don't see in a lot of high school quarterbacks. I want to hear from the crib. What do you think about Jacuri Brown?
I mean, I'm high on him. Obviously, you guys talked about it. He's a freak of nature. He's one of those guys you want walking off the ball first, right? Watching, the ESPN game that they had on last year, obviously he runs the ball with authority as a quarterback. He's got great athleticism. Obviously, mechanically, though, I don't know if he can compare to the Garcias and the TVDs. So I do think it's a huge, huge get for this class, because when you only have one kid committed in the class, it's probably best that he's a quarterback, able to recruit, and also being a high 4-star guy, like, blue chip prospect, he's able to bring in kids that you probably aren't usually able to get outside of South Florida. So I think that's more the benefit that he brings to the table, more than, what is he going to bring to Miami. I think he's going to be a nice depth option, in my opinion. I like him. I just don't know if, like, TBD for me is what you look for in quarterback.
Okay.
And Garcia is obviously the 5-star guy that you haven't gotten in a long time, since probably, you could say, Jacuri Harris, and I just don't know if that kid is going to be able to compete with those kids. But he holds himself to a high standard. He's a winner in Georgia, which is like I talked about before with competition. He definitely brings competition to the table. He's a big time athlete. I just don't know if, as a quarterback, he's going to be able to compete with those other guys.
Mike?
The crib took the words right out of my mouth. My favorite attribute about Jacuri so far, maybe off the field, and it's the fact that he's a Cane, and it seems like he's going to be the recruiting ambassador for that class, man. There was a bunch of wide-eyed emojis popping up from guys in, his class when they saw that he committed, and that means a lot right there. And he's like the DJ Dallas of this class from a couple of years ago, recruiting for us, if you ask me. But on the field, what I like, his athleticism, obviously. All right, that speaks, above anything else. But that arm strength, I'm assuming that Rhett is going to, assuming that, he gets the start whenever that is, and he wins a position, that Rhett's going to want to push that ball down the field all day, every day, okay? Or not all day, every day, because he does a good job of mixing up play calling, but more than we've seen, number one, and that's going to open up so much underneath, because you look at the stable of running backs that we got right now, and another thing, the way the offensive line is being recruited right now with Justice, hopefully everybody stays, and that's another thing, talking about staying, that depth at quarterback, you guys talked about it earlier. I hope everybody stays, because we all know what the culture is now. Guys see a little bit of adversity and they hit that portal. So we'll see, man. This is why you got to recruit a quarterback every year, because, if you have a stacked room, then the best ones, stay standing at the end. But I'm excited about him.
No, absolutely. And, it seems like Miami's focusing a lot in the state of Georgia in recruiting, a lot more emphasis than we've seen in past years. I want to pick everyone's brain. I know this has been a little bit of a conversation. It's very early. We only have one commit once again in the class of 2022. Is everyone fine? No one's feeling nervous? I'm personally, I'm good. I think we're in a fine situation. Jacuri Brown is once again our only commit. It used to be Brandon Cleveland. Then Brown committed. We had 2. We lost Jamal Johnson. So, Ross, what do you think about the class of 2022 and, how we stand right now moving forward?
I think we're okay. We've got the type of coaches that are going to make an impact. That we've already seen T-Rob immediately when he got here. He hit the recruiting trail like he'd been here for 5 years already. I get it. While, T-Rob might be forging, even though he has past relationships from his former jobs, he's forging new relationships with a University of Miami employee. So I can understand, guys like him, Jess Simpson getting back in his first year again. I'm not too worried about it. I mean, we've just got such a good caliber of recruiters now that to me, it's just a matter of time is all it is. Getting Jacuri, getting our quarterback, basically knocking down that first domino and it being the biggest domino you can get for a class is just going to lead to big things for us, I think.
What do you think, the Crib?
I mean, I wouldn't be too worried about it. Seeing a lot of the kids down here really high on Miami is a good sign. I do think Manny's taking a different approach to this class, not taking so many early commitments.
Yeah.
When in years past, you went to the year, you might lose to Alabama and you lose half the class in one game, so he's really just kind of building towards the season, recruiting the kids that he needs to recruit. I think especially the pass rushing class down here, he's done an excellent job of picking out who he's a big fan of, the Dante Andersons, the Daniel Lyons of the world. I do think it was a mistake losing Jamal Johnson, but I understand 6'2", 250-pound defensive ends aren't what they're looking for. But I think they're doing a good job. I think the 2022 class is a little saturated. I don't know if it's as good as the 21 class, and it's definitely not as good as the 23 class. So I think they're going to get the necessary guys to have a solid class. But I do think it's a good thing that they're really focusing on the 23 class because that is a loaded class, especially right out the front.
Yeah, I think it's important not to get too high or too low. As a fan, I mean, we'll drive ourselves crazy. We already know that being a Miami Hurricane fan is not good for your health. So why compound that? Why compound that when it comes to recruiting? I respect the guys that do it, but you guys are awesome at looking ahead at classes. But no, I'm not concerned at all because, I mean, look at it the other way around. Let's say we had 10 commits at this point, okay? Yeah. It doesn't – not a single thing matters until they sign. So we got one guy, okay, great, all right? And another thing is I don't think that this is the type of class, even though it's a very important year for Manny, I don't think this is the type of class that's going to say, I want to wait and see what these guys look like, how many wins they have in December. Don't ask me why, because I don't have an explanation for that. It's just a feeling. It's just a gut feeling I get because I think that they've seen, well, oh, wow, even Manny can pull a nice class even after a 6-7 season losing to FIU. You know what I mean? And he's building the pieces. You see after every year, whenever there's a question on the staff, a change is made, a question on the roster, you hit the portal for that position or whatever. So I'm not concerned at all by there just being one guy and signing day 7 months away. Well, 6 months away, if you want to look at it. April's tomorrow.
I remember Al Golden specifically. He would stack up those recruiting classes early on. We would be ranked number 1 in the nation, number 3 in the nation. And then, slowly as we got to signing day throughout that process, one by one, people would jump ship. And then we'd have to scramble towards the end and try to get, I guess, like a guy like Ryan Mays, for example, singling him out, but I don't really care. We would take guys like him, and his only offer was from Syracuse. It's like, hey, do you think he's really Miami caliber? You're just taking chances on his variables because he's a great athlete. And he was a good athlete. But, now at times that transitions well to the Power 5 level, the elite level. So, I think Manny Diaz, like it was previously stated, he's trying to turn the tables, be picky with the group he brings in. And he doesn't want anyone decommitting because I think in the state of Florida, we led heavily, with decommits. So, that's kind of been a big case we've had at Miami. So, yeah, I'm confident as well we'll finish strong. And I think the expectation is a top 10 recruiting class with the staff we have. And, Kamari Wilson is making his decision April 1st. Does anyone want to make an educated guess or a feeling as to where Kamari Wilson will pick? Because interesting about him, Miami wasn't really in play, in my opinion, until Travaris Robinson was on staff. It was his relationship that really put Miami as a player with Kamari Wilson. The Crib, what are your thoughts about Kamari Wilson's decision?
I mean, obviously he's a big-time recruit. I don't think he's necessarily a position of need, and I think that might be a red flag to the kid just because we've brought so many safeties in. I do think that there's going to be the Alabamas of the world, the Floridas that have done well recruiting defensive backs that are going to try to really push, especially late, for his services. I think he's a good player. I don't know if Miami fans expect a commitment. I know the Jacuri Brown commitment might sway things a little bit because they have a quarterback in the class. I know that, T-Rob being part of the staff is a good thing. Ed Reed being in the building definitely always helps with safeties. My expectation as a Kings fan is if he comes, he comes. It's awesome, but I wouldn't expect him to be in the class. Just kind of how I feel about it.
Ross, what do you think?
I think, the Crib kind of nailed it. I mean, is he a good player? Yes, he's a really good player. Is it a position of need for us? No, it's not. And not only how much does that weigh into the staff's factoring as to how much they push for him, but it also weighs into his factoring as to how much playing time he can rightfully get. If he's a guy who wants early playing time, Miami might not be the most ideal spot for him with some of these guys we got ahead of us. But if he's willing to come in and compete and battle, I'm all about loading a room up. I mean, I'll never turn down good talent. I know that we need to be a little more focused elsewhere, but if Kamari's going to say, hey, I'm locked in and I want to be a Cane, I'm all for it.
Mike.
100%, man. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't want to sound like a Gator fan or anything like that, but if he doesn't come here, it's not like, we need his services because of the numbers being low at the safety position. That's not the case. We got the best safety in Florida for the past 2 cycles. You know what I mean? James Williams and Avante Williams. And, you heard what Bubba said earlier today. He said that it's going to be him, Girvin, and Carter, and those are the best 3 safeties, and that's how it's going to be. So, I mean, I know that they'll be gone next year. Well, Bubba has another year after this year, doesn't he? Assuming he comes back, I think, right?
Interesting. Yeah, that whole COVID
regulation, so, right?
Eligibility, perhaps.
Okay. I mean, look, it's a load of room regardless, and like you guys have been saying, and I said previously, I don't want to sound like a Florida fan. I love to have him, but if we don't, it's not like we're missing on the quarterback that we needed to get in this class. You never say no to elite athletes, and great, but I mean, it's interesting. He said he was going to commit April 1st. Sean Taylor was born April 1st. Say what you want about that. If you want to read the tea leaves, then okay, but we'll see what happens tomorrow.
I'll tell you what, if Kamari Wilson commits to the University of Miami on April 1st, the Travaris Robinson effect has been implemented. And this is just a small little grain of salt you're going to see in this recruiting process. I'll keep it simple like that because everybody and their mom, Alabama, Georgia, you name it, wants Kamari Wilson. So to go out and grab him would be huge for this class. Yeah. Ross, anything else you want to add about recruiting before we move on to spring football at Miami?
Not anything that I guess we didn't really nail on here. Just the importance of closing this one outright and just how big that 2023 class is. We see we're littering the whole South basically with offers. So I mean, I hope it's something that Canes fans really take a chance to look into because that 2023 class is going to mean a lot for us.
Absolutely. And guys, spring football, it's back. We just had our first scrimmage. Xavier Restrepo goes off, 9 receptions, over 144 receiving yards, 2 TDs. The Crib, what are your thoughts about Xavier Restrepo, as a player coming out of high school and him transitioning this spring football season? What are the expectations for him at the Power 5 level?
I mean, in high school, he was at a few different spots, but he was always known as just a football player. He was that guy that could play safety, corner, play some running back, even played quarterback in some situations. Honestly, my expectations were I thought he was going to be like a Braxton Berrios type player, at Miami. I thought he was going to be very good, but I didn't think there was going to be early playing time, and that's still my expectation. I think that there's so much talent in that receiver for young guys. Just look at the 3 kids that just came in. I don't know if he's better than Jared Smith. I know he's not there yet, but I don't know if he's better than Jacoby George. I don't know if he's better than Romello Brinson. So it's going to be hard to say that he's going to see the field because of the scrimmage. I can't read into that too much. I think he's a very good player. I think it's nice to see that we finally have a potential slot threat at Miami. Because last year, I don't feel like they really had that. I think Mike Harley did a good job last year down the stretch. But the other 2 guys were incompetent almost. And I think it's a good thing to have a guy that could step in at any moment and be a tough player. But like I said, I just don't see him having that much of an impact beyond being a returner this year.
Mike, are we believing the offseason hype in Xavier Restrepo? Will he be the next wide receiver to step up after Mike Harley, or you're in a wait and see approach?
I am in a wait and see approach, but it's always good to hear good news about any of our guys having a good practice. You know what I mean? You never want to overlook that, because confidence is a big thing, especially in that receiver room, what we saw last year. So my favorite part about X's game is that he has a set of balls, all right? And he's not scared, man. That guy, if he's going to wait his turn, he's going to wait his turn. And he just seems like he has that old school mentality that he's going to help the team wherever he can, however he can. And if it's one snap a game, if it's to block, if it's special teams, he's going to earn his way on the field. And much like Braxton Berrios, he had to wait a while to get significant snaps. And I just think he's going to be one of those guys that whenever his name is called, that there won't be a drop-off in production. Sure-handed guy, and he's smart. He's a smart player. I think that goes a long way, too. Really good route runner. We know that part. But right here, man, that guy's got it. That guy's tough. And he'll be there for his brothers. Hopefully this what did Manny call it? Whatever he used the word to call that bad culture that we had. I think he called it a virus. Okay. X seems to be like the complete opposite of that. And if that's rubbing off on all the other guys, then that's the type of guy you want in your locker room.
Yeah, I think if we had kind of the mindset in the wide receiver room of guys like Xavier Restrepo, Braxton Berrios, and Mike Harley, I think it's a very, very talented group, but not everyone, has that mindset. So it'll be interesting how things pan out. Ross, what are your expectations for the wide receiver rotation?
I'm definitely a lot more hopeful going into this season than I was last season. I had, last season for me, it was about potential. It was about guys like Pope and Wiggins finally figuring things out. Well, Pope and Wiggins are kind of on the chopping block right now in a lot of sense. These young receivers, they are hungry, they are talented, and they are ready to compete. It's why guys like Xavier Restrepo are out there putting on a show already. One of the big things with Restrepo was his ability to make plays get yards after the catch. That's something that Lashley really values in this system. Guys who can add those kind of pieces remind me kind of some of the guys he had at SMU at times. Guys that were specifically good at certain things, a couple all-around guys, but guys that he could trust. Harley, Rambo, developing the guy. My hope is Keyshawn Smith, becomes that third guy with him. But I'm not going to sleep on Pope quite yet. We've got this wide receiver coach Likens. We all seem to like the guy. He's had some success. I want to trust in him. I want to think that a whole off season and an actual full spring will actually show that he can get our guys right, get some of the mistakes that were developed in the past out of the way and onto new and better things. I'm kind of excited for this wide receiver group, honestly. And, if the guys like Pope and Wiggins start to, actually come around, it's just extra depth. What they say, they wanted to go 6 deep, I believe they wanted to go this year. I believe we can do that, especially by the time we start getting around week 4, week 5 or so, and these young guys start getting some more snaps and getting experience. I think we'll start to see that 6 deep.
Mike, you had signs.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. One thing I do want to say is I really hope, and I won't be surprised if my hope goes the opposite way, but I hope that, Canes fans don't get pissed off with the coaching staff if we do see guys like 6 and 8 get more snaps than they wanted, way more snaps than the younger guys. Okay. I'm not here to call out who's going to be a starter, but the reason I say that is because isn't that what you want from guys that are here for 4 and 5 years? You want them to get better, right? There's something called a money year. Okay. And that happens when money's on the line, especially if you have, expectations at the next level. These guys know that they came with a lot of expectations and they haven't lived up to them. So I have no problem, because something strikes me about this staff that they're not going to just give away snaps. I don't think they're going to play favorites. It's a big year for Manny. He knows it. Okay. He blindly trusts Rhett with the offense. If not, he wouldn't name himself defensive coordinator. I said that to say what? If these guys are earning it on the practice field and they earn it because they're the better player or receiver than a lot of people and then a lot of guys that we want to see, like the younger guys, then they deserve to get on the field. Now, if they can't translate what's going on Green Tree to Hard Rock, then you make a change. But if we keep hearing guys' names like Pope and Wiggins in the offseason, which we really haven't yet, okay, but say we do, people shouldn't be upset if they're getting, playing time because, hey, they're doing better than the Keyshawns. They're doing better than everybody else we want to see, the Reddings and so on and so forth. But same thing with the safeties, man. Like, everybody wants to see, the younger guys. I get it. But that money year, it speaks a lot, man. Like, the light bulb just tends to go off sometimes in that 5th year. So I just hope people don't get upset because this coaching staff strikes me as the staff that is going to play the best guy.
The Crib, you coached in South Florida. You cover recruiting in South Florida. You break down a lot of players. Andrew Ivan said Mark Pope was the best 7-on-7 player he's ever seen. What do you think happened with Mark Pope and D. Wiggins throughout their career at Miami?
I think the problem was that they were 7-on-7 guys. I think that was the issue. On Friday nights, I mean, not to say Mark Pope wasn't a talented kid in high school. Obviously he was. He was a blue chip prospect. But I never saw him take over Friday nights like I saw Jacuri Brooks take over Friday nights. I never saw him take over Friday nights like I saw Jacoby George take over Friday nights or Rashard Smith. I mean, there was just times where he would go missing. I mean, he would bust a big kick return and then for the next 5-6 drives would be invisible on offense. Is it a product of playing for Southbridge where there was really no stable quarterback situation? Potentially. But that's here nor there. That's not what we want to hear at Miami. We want to hear him develop. And I never saw him or Wiggins as guys that were elite receivers. I thought in that class, Jerry Jeudy was a guy that we should have been. I think they were in the same class, I believe, right? Jerry Jeudy and Mark Pope.
Potentially.
Around the same time. But like when we were talking about elite receivers, we're talking about Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith, who was supposed to come to Miami. I just saw lost confidence. I never saw the confidence of Mark Pope outside of the 7-on-7 realm that Ivans was hoping he would have become in college. I didn't see the transition from him as a number one guy to the University of Miami. I thought he was going to be a nice gadget player on offense, maybe some screens, maybe some jet sweeps, and really be impactful in the return game. So I don't know. I was never that high, honestly. Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it is what it is. We'll see what happens with Mark Pope. And I think that's where coaching comes in, is developing players, take the skill set they had and, make it better. We see that with Northwestern, the college football team, not Miami Northwestern. Pat Fitzgerald, he makes the most out of his under-the-radar 3-star recruits that attend, basically an Ivy League school. So you got to develop the players you have that you recruited. And ultimately, I think Mark Pope, he's very elite at one thing. He's very fast. And I think if you put him on the inside at slot, he can excel this upcoming season strictly. Ross, anything else you want to add before we move on to the next topic?
No, I think we covered it pretty good there. I think that this is a pretty dang exciting group that we got to work with here, guys, honestly. I mean, if development is what it's going to be and Likens is the guy we think it's going to be, and, there's actually a player we didn't bring up that I want to bring up, and I truly hope it's his year to shine. It's Jeremiah Payton. We saw what this guy had in high school. I don't know what's going to happen with Payton anymore. I had really, really high expectations early on. I truly don't know anymore, but I really hope that, this full off season and a spring with Likens, gets him feeling a little better and gets him right.
Guys, let's switch over to the defensive side of the football. This defensive line unit, it's coming off of a very special year. We're potentially going to have 3 defensive ends drafted in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. Since 2006, NC State was the last program to have 2 defensive ends get drafted in the first round. I believe Todd Stroud was their D-line coach as well. So, we're losing Roche, Russo, Phillips, complete freak athletes. What's the expectation for this defensive line under Coach Jess Simpson, Mike?
Listen, man, I don't expect a drop off because of the simple fact that last time the Simpson was here, that was like a top 3 defensive line in the country, or the best defensive line in the country. They lived in the backfield. He recruited some of the guys that he's coming back to coach right now. So I do not expect a drop off, even though we're losing some serious guys. If I sound like a homer, I really don't mean to. It's just because of the simple fact I'm saying that because we know what Jess Simpson brings to the table in terms of getting his guys prepared, getting his guys ready. He has NFL experience. He's a player's coach. The guys love him. And I'm sorry, but the last time I checked, we don't have any scrubs at that position. Okay, it's going to be too deep. All right, and it's going to be like a revolving door out there. I'm most excited to see Jacuri Harvey because the guy has 4% body fat, according to Manny Navarro. And I mean, at 250 plus, that's ridiculous. Reminded me of when Alan Bailey was recruited as a linebacker. Everybody said at 260, there's only a matter of time before he puts his hands in the dirt. Alan Bailey was recruited at 260 pounds, and he had 6% body fat. And the guy's still playing in the league, had a solid career here. So I'm not saying that's what Jacuri Harvey is, but Alan Bailey was disgustingly built and a productive guy. But I mean, the rotation there is going to be awesome. I don't expect a drop off. I actually expect better production from the D line this season than I do last season with those guys leaving. No slight to the first rounders that we got going. Miami hasn't had a first rounder drafted at the DM position since I think Jerome McDougal in like 03 or whatever it was. But I just think that the collective unit coming back is going to be, how do they say, the whole better than the sum of its parts? That's how it's going to be.
The crib. Mike did a very great job breaking down our defensive ends. Defensive tackle room, we got Leonard Taylor coming in. And I know you covered a lot of Leonard Taylor. Is he the real deal?
The real deal is not even giving him the credit he deserves. I mean, this kid was a world beater, man. I think I know it's a horrible thing to say. Canes fans should love COVID. they should love COVID because this is the type of kid that usually leaves South Florida, goes to Alabama, and becomes a first-round draft pick, right? And I know that the defensive tackle room is unusually deep. I mean, you look at everybody's coming back. You get Nesta coming back, you get Ford coming back, you get Miller coming back, and then you add Leonard Taylor. I mean, it's almost wow. It's like the first time in a long time we've had an interior defensive line that rivals some of the top teams in the country. And just to jump off Mike's point with the defensive ends, they are clones of the guys that just left. Do I expect the same production from first-round draft pick defensive ends? Absolutely not. But the scheme kind of caters to defensive ends. It's a pass rushing type scheme. Get pressure on the quarterback. It's not too much, read and react like D'Onofrio used to do, or any of those past failed off defensive coordinators. The defense puts a lot of pressure on the linebackers, not so much the defensive ends. And I think that they are freaky athletes on the edge, and they're gonna have production just because of the way the scheme works. But just to go back to defensive tackles, I'm excited to see what Leonard Taylor does as a freshman. I think another year of Nesta in the scheme is going to do him wonders. I think he's expanding his game past being a bull rush defensive tackle. Miller, another year older, maybe trimming off some weight, is going to be really good for the defense as well. And Ford being another year older, his strength in the middle of the defense obviously does a lot of wonders. So I'm excited to see what they do this year.
And we didn't even mention Jared Harrison Hunt.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, we saw a little sample of what he can contribute this upcoming season. And, I'm curious what you think, Ross. What kind of defensive scheme are we going to see from Coach Manny Diaz and also Coach Shoop as well be implemented this upcoming season?
That's a good question. With Shoop being there, I feel like that kind of opens some more doors for us because we've already heard the respect Manny Diaz has for him. I mean, he's basically going to be overseeing the entire defenses from what it sounds like, and he's going to be the guy he bounces ideas off of. Will not be shocked at all if Shoop is our DC, not this year, but the following year after his contract runs up with his former school. I don't blame the guy. Make a little money from his former school and be an analyst here. It's a great thing. I honestly don't. I'm not exactly sure, honestly, 100% exactly what scheme we are going to run with these guys, because I don't know if Shoop is actually going to possibly influence something new out of Diaz. I'm kind of hoping he is. And with T-Rob being there, him updating that secondary and getting us more equipped to battle the spread offenses, we should see a little bit of changes in that too. We'll see what Aristide, I know he's a first-time guy, and we'll see what kind of ideas he brings from A&M. But I think we're going to see some changes regardless, and I think that we're going to see, kind of a Miami defense that we're used to. We're going to see our athletes winning again. We're going to see even young guys on the outside, even though these young guys like a defensive end and stuff might take a little while to get going. Like the Crib said, these are clones. These are prototypes of what we've had in the past that has worked. I don't see any reason why we can't start to recreate that again.
Mike, what do you think? What is this going to be, your similar 4-2-5 defensive scheme that we saw under Coach Baker? Or this is going to go back to Manny Diaz's defense that we saw early on when it really was thriving at the University of Miami in his tenure as defensive coordinator?
I mean, as a coach, good coaches adapt their system to what they have, to the players that they have. Obviously, in college, you can recruit what you want, you know what I'm saying? But I think we're going to see a lot of athletes on the field because of the simple fact that you look at the amount of safeties that are coming in. Like, something tells me, how basketball's changed to you go small, everything. On offense, you go small. I think football's changed in that regard too, because you want to get as much speed on the field defensively because of the way the offenses are run, spread and stuff like that. So that's why I do think we're going to see a lot of, still with the two linebackers and then, the strikers, like a hybrid. But to answer your question, 4-2-5, not too many three linebackers on the field unless you got to run, heavy team or whatever. But I'm totally trusting, whether you want to call me a homer or not. I trust Manny. I trust that defensive staff. And when you hear T-Rob talk, man, I remember one of his first interviews after he got hired. He sounds like a Kane. Okay, he talks about playing ones-on-ones in practice, and the best guy is going to play on the field. You got to have that, next play mentality, things like that. That speaks of a Kane, and the guy went to Auburn. Okay, he's got more Kane in him than some guys that have been in the program for however long, or gone after however long. But I do think we're going to see, two linebackers, a striker, and as many athletes on there in the secondary as we can have, just to match offense's speed and, spread, on the offensive side of the ball. But depth is the name of the game, man. It's something that we haven't had in a while, and I think that's going to be huge for us.
Speaking of depth, hey, you build depth through your recruiting classes, right? You got the young guys come in, see if they can step up. The Crib, who is an underclassman coming in freshman year to look out for on the defensive side of the football?
Obviously, I think the two biggest ones to watch out for are the biggest names, James Williams and Leonard Taylor. I think James can bring so much to the table in regards to his versatility. Everybody sees 6'4", 6'5", 220 pounds and think will linebacker, right? Weak side linebacker. I see a guy that can play free safety if needed. I see a guy that can play strong safety if needed, help out in cover two situations. I think he really can help out at that striker position. I know everybody wants to slot Chase Smith into there, but I think Smith is more of that guy that's going to play will linebacker in the future. I think James is that jack of all trades that Miami's really needed. You see guys like Isaiah Simmons and you see guys like Minka Fitzpatrick for Alabama that they fill so many different roles, and that's really where I see James, bringing some value to the table. Leonard Taylor, I think, is going to bring a lot to the table in regards to interior pass rush. We've seen a lot in regards to our defensive end putting up a ton of production, but Nesta's done a decent job with it, but we really haven't seen a defensive tackle step up since Gerald Willis, and it's something that we've really been missing.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm glad you are putting a big emphasis at defensive tackle, and that's been a position where Miami, depth wise, personnel wise, it's a little bit lacking to a certain extent. And hey, maybe Leonard Taylor, Jared Harrison, Hunt, Nessa Silvera, even Jonathan Ford. This could be the group that puts Miami over the fence, at that position. I'm curious what everyone thinks. Who's going to be our starting linebackers this upcoming season? I'll start with Ross, and then it'll cater to my next question.
I mean, I think I've got kind of a prototypical answer for some Canes, or at least what the hopeful side of some Canes is. I expect to see Flag in there getting a lot of snaps. Brooks, I still got to see Brooks win that battle, to get these snaps, but he's the guy I definitely want to see. And then, of course, the striker position, we got Frierson coming back after having a strong year last year. And I can't wait to see what Frierson does. I expect just a fantastic season from him. But, I know, I don't like to get too crazy about freshmen, but these guys need to watch out because Troutman's explosive, and Troutman's going to push these guys, and he's going to be competitive early, I think. I don't expect him to, of course, get major snaps early, but I think he's going to end up seeing the field as a freshman occasionally.
Mike, what do you think?
Who do I want to see versus who do I think is going to play? I want to see Brooks and Huff. Why? Those are probably the two best athletes at the position, and Miami hasn't had that athletic linebacker. Even when Quarterman and Pinckney and McLeod, they were doing their thing. Those guys weren't athletes. They were great linebackers. They were thumpers, sideline to sideline, okay, but you don't want them covering a Jalen Knighton out of the backfield. You know what I mean? So in today's, like I talked about earlier, football's changed just like basketball has. And, you got to get athletes out there because of the offenses. So who do I want? I want Huff and I want Brooks, okay? I also got love for Steed, too. Who do I think's going to play? Man, I have no freaking idea. I do think Brooks is going to be one of the starters, but opposite him, I don't know, man. I really don't know. I think Brooks, because of his athleticism, and he was in the system a little bit. We saw him get some snaps last year. But I have no idea, dude. I have no idea who's going to start. It'll be a pleasant surprise for me to see who starts day one.
Why do Bradley Jennings? I feel like, in my opinion, like Mike said, who I want, who I think will start. I think Bradley Jennings is going to start right away. And this what is going to relate to my next question. Why do you guys think there is a seniority thing going on at Miami? And if you disagree, I would love to hear your opinion. But, I feel like we play veteran players, upperclassmen over younger guys a lot. A perfect example is Scott Patchin starting over Gregory Rousseau. And the rest is history. I think Rousseau even had more sacks that his last season at Miami than Chase Young. So, I'm going to start with you. Why do you think Manny Diaz, in the Miami Hurricanes football program, is starting upperclassmen over young, talented players?
I think it's the complexity of his scheme on defense with Manny. I think he really has to trust his guys. I think you see when he talks, it's a lot about trust, and it's a lot about what players bring to the table mentally, right? So I think that's a huge reason why you see a lot of veteran guys more than the younger guys. There is a transition from high school to college, even when you're a South Florida kid. Just a learning curve is there. This year, I don't think it's going to be so much of seniority, more of just the best guy. I do think that Bradley Jennings is probably going to start, like you said. I do think Corey Flagg starts in the middle. But I do think Avery Huff ends up taking that weak side linebacker job. I think he's starting to learn the scheme, starting to come into his own. I remember at St. Thomas, he was an absolute freak of nature, sideline to sideline guy that you prototype into that weak side linebacker spot, can cover receivers up the seam. He does all the right things as an athlete, but I do think it just took some time for him to acclimate to the college game. I think on the defensive line, you're going to start to see a rotation of those younger guys as well. And defensive end, you're going to see younger guys. On the back end, I don't think that the three best safeties are who Bubba Bolden said. So I think you're going to see Cam Kinchens roll in there. I think you're going to see James Williams roll in there. I think you're going to see those guys that are football players, more than, thumpers, kind of like Amari Carter. Like Amari Carter, I never saw Amari Carter as the guy that was going to translate to the college game because he was a headhunter in high school. He was a headhunter in high school. So Girvin Hall was always a tiny guy, not a lot of speed. I thought he could have been, what's his name? Jaquan Johnson. But he really hasn't turned into that guy just because he doesn't bring the leadership to the table like him. So I think you're going to see a lot of young guys on defense this year roll in, and it's not going to be that seniority storyline as we've seen in the past.
Mike, what are your thoughts?
I do, and I don't think that that's the case with the staff, like having seniority, because I don't think that, because, that's the last thing you want to hear as a fan. Like, what are you doing playing guys because they've been here longer when you clearly have talent behind them that's better? Like, that's alarming. You know what I mean? You're not supposed to play favorites as a coach. The reason I don't think that is because look what happened last year when they opened up, the wide receiver room. The same guys got playing time. You know what I mean? So what does that tell you? The other guys behind them really weren't ready to step up. When Coach Diaz came out and said, okay, we're going to open up the wide receiver competition and, this, that, and whatever, we saw Mike Harley step up. But it was the same guys getting snaps. We didn't see X out there. We didn't see much of Redding. We didn't see much of Keyshawn Smith or whoever else, So it's one of those things where I guess you got to be in the locker room to really know what's going on. I call it like I see it. I'm not an insider, so I don't know. But it would be alarming and disappointing because I trust Manny blindly. You know what I mean? So if that's the case, then I'd be really, really disappointed. But I just don't get that feel this year. If that was the case last year, okay, year before, whatever. But this year, year 3, Manny knows it's a big year for him. Okay, it ain't no money year for him because something tells me that if Miami has 8 wins this year, he's coming back next year. But a lot of guys coming back. That O-line is as deep as ever, and Manny knows that this is a put up or shut up year. So, and you hear what Travaris says, and to repeat what I said earlier, I just don't get the idea that at least defensively, that these guys are going to be playing favorites.
114 people in the chat. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We're having a lot of great conversation about the Miami Hurricanes football program, about recruiting. I hope you guys are enjoying the amount of information being passed around. Ross, what do you think about this whole seniority thing down in Miami?
There's no doubt that in some ways it's been a problem. I completely understand the idea of coaches wanting guys to understand the playbook and wanting it to be to the point where you've got guys that understand it so good that you can have a couple of them almost be coaches for you on the field at times. So, I totally understand that. I think last year, COVID definitely played a big role in that, no doubt about it. As far as we know, maybe Manny wanted to go a little younger last year. Maybe it just, with the circumstances, truly couldn't happen. Like Mike said, year 3, this is the year I think where that experiment gets to take, I don't even want to call it an experiment, but that process gets to move forward a little more. I think with the full spring, a full lineup of practices, full fall and all that, we're going to see the young guys get to actually truly learn this playbook and get the chances to impress the coaches. There were so few far between chances to impress last year. You make a couple plays in practice, it didn't mean that you understood the playbook in Manny's eyes, though. And we know that it's the nuances and it's the small stuff. This offseason, this preseason gives them the chance to truly catch up.
Mike, you stated this upcoming year for Manny Diaz. It's a big year. Manny Diaz, per se, on the hot seat if he doesn't put up the wins and losses. The wins, obviously, not the losses. We don't want to see that. But is Manny Diaz on the hot seat this upcoming season? Yes or no?
This upcoming season, I don't think so, man. Because like I said, if Manny Diaz ends up winning 8 games this year, whether that's including a bowl win or not, if he wins 8 games this year, he's coming back for year 4.
Right.
So I don't know if that means that he's on the hot seat entering this year. You know what I mean? If Miami wins 6 games, then it's like, oh, okay, cool. we got to talk, Manny. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And I don't think he's going to win 8 games. I hope not. He better not. I mean, there's been a win total. He's been upping the win total ever since he got here. So this is the best team he's had in since he's been named head coach. And so we'll see, man. But to answer your question, is he on the hot seat this year? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say I don't think he's on the hot seat this year.
Yeah. No,
I think what happens after this year will put him on the hot seat for 2022.
I completely agree. And, unless things just go like 2019, like
Right.
180, where it's like he like loses the locker room and alumni are flipping out. But yeah, no, 8-4, that is, that's fine. I mean, it's not improvement per se, but, it is a winning record, and we don't consistently win 8 games back to back at Miami. So, hey, I think that may put him in the hot seat for the next year, but, it'll be very interesting how Manny Diaz does turn out in his 3rd year of college football. He is a learner. We have seen that throughout his resume of college football. He's been at the top at Texas as defensive coordinator. He's been fired in literally less than 365 days, and he's been to the bottom of college football, back to Louisiana Tech or Middle Tennessee State, wherever he was. So he's worked his way from the bottom back to the top. And the Crib, what's your outlook for the 2021 Miami Hurricanes as a football team as a whole?
I think that really just depends on De'Ara King. I think if King comes back healthy, I mean, you're looking at potentially a 10-win season. It's not an extremely difficult schedule. The ACC is not – I mean, obviously the ACC has the Clemsons and the North Carolinas, but you also got the Georgia Tech is a middling team. You got teams that are just kind of middle tier teams. So I think there's potential for double-digit wins. My expectations are like 9. And to kind of bounce off the point you guys were just talking about, I think every head coach, unless you win a national championship, is on the hot seat at Miami. I mean, not necessarily to be fired, but there's an expectation to win at Miami, even if you don't have the guys, even if the year before you won 6 games. I mean, I heard fans talking about going 11-1 before COVID last season. There was just crazy expectations, and that's just kind of the territory with the Hurricanes, right? But my expectations are defensively they'll be better. I don't think there's going to be a 500-yard rushing game going to be on the schedule. I think the offense is going to improve another year under Lashley. Do I think that they're going to approach, college football playoff material? No, I don't. But I think if they get to a New Year's Six bowl, that's a huge success. I think if they win a bowl, I think that's a huge success. And I think Hurricane fans should really just look at improvement on last year as a big win.
Ross, anything you want to touch up on we haven't discussed yet that's been on your mind?
For me, this upcoming season, it's about the offensive line, especially on offense. If that's just the focus on, if we just cut it down to just that for now, Garen Justice has got a lot to prove. I know that he is a capable coach. I've got a chance to actually go back and witness some things he's done from a year 2 to 3, even 1 to 2 to 3 year basis. It seems that year 2 of his offensive lines, the run blocking starts to pick up a little better, and that's what we need. We need a balanced offense going forward. We need to be able to provide Derek King with something that he can sit back on and not have defenses kind of allowed to, cheat on him or anything like that. To me, it's about getting Chaney, Rooster. I mean, we know Harris is going to get involved, but it's about getting Chaney and Rooster just cooking, and that's where the offensive line comes into play. I mean, it's just make or break in the trenches for me this year. Bama week 1. I mean, we got to be able to bang in the trenches if we even want a chance to even be halfway competitive.
The Crib, you think we got a shot against Alabama?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing that they're so far into the development of the program. It's just a different stage, right? And I think it's a good game to see where you're at. I think you keep that game within 14 points. That's a success. They're going into that game with everybody thinks they're losing a lot. Bryce Young might be the best quarterback in college football next year. Yeah. Everybody doesn't realize that, right? I mean, you lose Mac Jones, you lose a Heisman Trophy, receiver. Okay, let's replace him with Jacuri Brooks, right? Like, let's replace him with Christian Leary, right? Like, they just reload. So Miami's just at a different stage. I think if we see the defense get a few stops, right, force a few turnovers, I think if we see the offense gel a little bit in regards to the offensive line being able to block some of the best defensive players in college football, I think that would be a good point for the rest of the season, right? I don't expect it to be very competitive. That's just kind of my view on it, just because Bama is so good. They're just such a good program, and Saban is the GOAT.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned Bryce Young. I've never seen a quarterback as well-rounded coming out of high school as Bryce Young was. Pocket presence, very elite, very high football IQ. He's mobile enough to get more than a first round, in my opinion. Great arm, great accuracy. I love him. Honestly, as an NFL prospect, I could see why he was the top quarterback coming out of high school. So I expect big things from Bryce Young, and I'm curious how he plays against Miami week 1. His offensive coordinator is going to be Bill O'Brien. I think Doug Marrone is their offensive line coach. It's an all-star cast down in Tuscaloosa. Mike, what are your thoughts about the early matchup in Atlanta?
I have never, and I will never say that Miami's not going to lose, not going to win a game, because, I mean, anything can happen on any given Saturday. That's number one. What I will say is the same thing that I said in 2017 before we played Clemson. All right. Can Miami win? Yes. All right. What does Miami have to do to win? They got to play a damn near perfect game. What are the chances of Miami playing a damn near perfect game is the question. Miami has way less room for error than Bama does, okay, to win any game, especially when you're going up against the number 1 team, in the country to start the year, okay? Crib made a great point. You're losing all these guys, but just like Miami back in the day, they would reload. They wouldn't rebuild, they reload. So I get it, but it's still the best time to play Alabama in years, okay? That's my opinion. And so I will never say that Miami won't win the game. I just can't. The alum in me won't let me do it. But they just have to play their best game ever, okay? All of those guys. And not even on the playing field, but on the coaching staff too. They got to coach their best game. So I hate moral victories, but I'll be walking out of there with my chest all puffy, just like I did a couple years back, leaving Orlando after losing to the Gators. Because after that loss, you couldn't tell me that we weren't going to run the table. You couldn't tell me we weren't going to run the table. But we'll see, man. These guys, you know what? I'd be interested to know if they're not already talking about Bama now. Because why not? It is the next game on the schedule. Why not be talking about Bama right now in spring camp? I don't see why that's a bad thing. All right, put the target on your back or their back right now. Have beat Bama all over the locker room. You got to start talking about them at some point. Why not put it in their heads now? Because that the players are thinking about it, even though they're not talking about it.
There's a quote from the movie Catch Me If You Can. And the kid asks his father, why do the Yankees always win? And he says, because the opponents can't keep their eyes off the pinstripes. If Miami goes into the game and just focuses on the game, not the opponent, not the venue it's at, not the background, first game of week of college football, and just plays Miami Hurricanes football, what the coaches have been preaching and teaching them throughout their entire offseason, they can succeed and beat the Alabama Crimson Tide. But the moment starts getting to their head, the lights, camera, the action of the game, and the opponent, hey, it might get ugly. But that's why they played the game. Ross, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, man, I think we covered it pretty good, man. I think everything here, especially about Bama, everything we're saying, of course, is a lot easier said than done, especially when you're going up against the Titan that Bama is. I mean, they don't rebuild, they reload. And that's just something that you have to give Saban respect for. I mean, it's what he's doing is flat out incredible. I'm worried that we're just gonna get our asses handed to us. I don't like to be like that about something, especially this early. But this is just a team that's so far above what we might be at. We need to catch them by surprise. Is what we have to do. It's a week 1 thing. I mean, we got to somehow, and like I said, this will be easier said than done as well. But we got to show them something new. These coaches are experienced coaches. Some of these guys have been in the NFL for years. They are going to dissect our film head to toe, top to bottom. They will know everything from last year. we got to come with some new stuff, and we can't just come with some new stuff. We got to execute new stuff. We got to show discipline. We got to have accountability on the field as well. I mean, this is everything. This is the game. You know, if we want to, we don't even have to win it to get things going in the right direction. We just simply have to compete and do things right. That's not something you want to say at the University of Miami, but as long as we can show that we can battle with these guys, we're at least on the right foot going forward.
Mm-hmm.
The Crib, Mike, Ross, I appreciate everyone for coming on the show. I really appreciate the conversations we had. It was a great show, very informative. Thank you to the 125 people who were live with us. We greatly appreciate your support. And always, all about the you guys. Go Canes.